A significant intervention from the Queen, expressing her hopes for the monarchy when Prince Charles becomes king.
I thought it had to be upside down for the press.
As they consider. I don't matter.
Celebrating the 70th anniversary of her own accession, she says she'd like her daughter-in-law, Camilla, to become Queen Consort. It paves the way for the Duchess of Cornwall to be crowned at her husband's side. We'll be live at Sandringham. Also tonight, hoping to steady the ship, Boris Johnson adds new recruits to his inner circle at number 10. Tougher laws to force the removal of harmful content from social media, including forums encouraging suicide. And in the Six Nations, Ireland thrash champions Wales in Dublin, while Scotland beat England at Murrayfield. Good evening. In the last few minutes, the Queen has announced her hopes for the monarchy when Prince Charles becomes king. In a highly significant intervention, she's expressed her sincere wish that her daughter-in-law, Camilla, be known as Queen Consort, paving the way for the Duchess of Cornwall to be crowned at her husband's side. The news comes tonight on the eve of the 70th anniversary of her own accession to the throne. Our royal correspondent Nicholas Witchell reports now from Sandringham.
She's preparing to mark the 70th anniversary of the day she came to the throne. This morning, the Queen greeted guests in the ballroom at Sandringham, walking slowly and carefully, steadied with a stick, but alert and fully engaged.
Be upside down for the press.
As they consider. I don't matter.
The Queen seemed quite fit and well today. Yes, she had that little sparkle in her eye, and you know, a sense of humour was there. So yeah, I'd say she was fine.
A little frail, but terrific sense of humour she's got, which you know really stands out. And very bright, and her memory must be fantastic.
And it's clear for the first time how actively the Queen is contemplating the arrangements for the future.
Probably be quite different, because nowadays we do things quite differently, don't we?
In a statement tonight, she recalled the pledge she made at the time of her 21st birthday.
I declare before you all that my whole life, whether it be long or short, shall be devoted to your service.
The Queen made it clear there is no question of her stepping back from her role. She said, "It gives me pleasure to renew to you the pledge I gave in 1947 that my life will always be devoted to your service." And then she turns to the transition to the reign of her eldest son and says this: "When in the fullness of time my son Charles becomes king, I know you will give him and his wife Camilla the same support that you have given me. And it is my sincere wish that, when the time comes, Camilla will be known as Queen Consort as she continues her own loyal service." Until now, mindful of the sensitivities around Camilla's role in the breakdown of Charles's first marriage, it had been intended that she would become Princess Consort. Now the Queen has made clear her wish that Camilla should have the full status as the wife of a king and be known as Queen. Tonight, Clarence House said Charles and Camilla were touched and honoured.
Indeed, Nick. Just how significant is the Queen's intervention, announced in the last 15 minutes or so, about how Camilla should be addressed?
It is highly significant, I think. It indicates not least that the Queen is now thinking about what happens after the end of her reign, and of course it settles one of the big unresolved issues about Charles's reign. What will Camilla be known as? Now, the Queen is careful in her choice of words. My sincere wish, she says, strictly speaking, it should be for the Prime Minister of the day to advise on something such as this. But who is going to argue now that the Queen has said this? Charles, of course, will be delighted. He has wanted this ever since he and Camilla married. The Queen, mindful, though, of public opinion, aware of the hostility that there has been towards Camilla over the years from certain quarters, but mindful, too, as she says in her statement, of how blessed she was to have Prince Philip as her consort. She clearly believes that the country will now accept this. She clearly believes that Charles and Camilla deserve it. One important distinction: Queen Consort is the name given to the wife of the king by 1,000 years of custom and precedent. It has no constitutional significance, unlike Queen Regnant, which is what the Queen is, the sovereign and the head of state. One touching note: the Queen finished this statement, issued on the eve of the 70th anniversary of her accession, with the words, "Your servant, Elizabeth R."
Nick, many thanks. Nick Witchell there live at Sandringham. Prince Andrew will give evidence under oath in London next month to lawyers in the civil case representing the woman accusing him of sexual assault. Virginia Giuffre claims as a 17-year-old she was trafficked by the convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein to have sex with the Duke in the early 2000s. The Prince strenuously denies the allegations. Boris Johnson has announced 2 new major appointments to his Downing Street team, saying the shake-up will improve how Number 10 operates following weeks of turmoil. The Labour Party have accused the Prime Minister of panicking and said the government is collapsing into chaos. Our political correspondent Ian Watson has the very latest.
After another week of bad headlines, the loss of senior Downing Street staff and some of his own MPs openly calling for him to go, tonight Boris Johnson was attempting to get on the front foot. He's appointed the former BBC journalist Git O'Harry as his Director of Communications. He worked for Boris Johnson when he was London Mayor. And here he was, just over a week ago, setting out what the Prime Minister had to do.
Boris has always underestimated how critical it is to have a fantastic team around him. And I don't think, even if he can pull this back, he will be allowed to do it unless he promises to his party that he's going to overhaul that machinery.
And as part of that overhaul, unusually, the new Chief of Staff in Downing Street won't be a civil servant, but a politician, the former Brexit Secretary Steve Barclay. His job will be to ensure that the Cabinet and MPs feel more involved in decision-making. Although Tony Blair's former Chief of Staff, Jonathan Powell, questioned whether a demanding full-time role as a government official really can be combined with the job of an MP. After so-called Partygate, Boris Johnson had to promise his MPs behind closed doors that he'd make significant changes to the way that Downing Street was run. And I'm told there'll be an even bigger staff shake-up announced in the coming week. But he's also being pressed by senior figures in his party to make changes to his cabinet, to look beyond his natural allies. And I'm told that those discussions, or perhaps I should say negotiations, are already underway.
Is actually an opportunity for a reset, which I hope the Prime Minister takes, because it's a very important part of his premiership, that he actually builds bridges not just between Downing Street and the Parliamentary Party, but across the Parliamentary Party.
But will this be enough? More MPs are considering submitting letters of no confidence, and potential rivals to the Prime Minister seem to be limbering up. Rebuilding trust with MPs is one thing, but what voters think is rather more crucial. And here in Plymouth, the Prime Minister still seems to have his work cut out.
He's apologised, he's clearing out Number 10. Maybe he's doing his bit.
He might be doing his bit, but he let a lot of people down.
Well, I don't think anybody else could take over and do anything any better.
Boris Johnson is hoping that the changes in Downing Street will convince his Conservative critics not to change its occupant. Ian Watson, BBC News, Westminster.
The government's latest coronavirus figures show cases in the UK remain high but stable. There were more than 60,000 new infections recorded in the latest 24-hour period. On average, more than 85,000 cases were reported per day in the last week. Just over 14,500 people are in hospital with COVID, and that number is falling. 259 deaths have been reported. That's of people who died within 28 days of a positive test, though some will have died of other causes. On average, in the past week, 247 deaths were announced every day. On vaccinations, nearly 37.5 million people have now had a booster jab, which means that more than 65% of those aged 12 and over have had 3 vaccine doses. A 5-year-old boy who was trapped for 4 days after falling 32 metres down a well in Morocco has died. Rayan Auram's body was recovered after a huge rescue effort that had been hampered by fears of a landslide. He fell through the well's narrow opening while out playing on Tuesday. The government wants tougher laws forcing social media companies to take down illegal content without having to wait for users to report it. The online safety bill would compel the removal of material under a wide range of categories, including drugs and arms dealing and forums that encourage suicide. Here's Katie Prescott.
Frankie was 15 when she took her own life in 2018. Afterwards, her parents had her laptop forensically checked.
And realised that back earlier in the year, January, February, March of 2018, she'd been accessing sites about self-harm, suicide, just appalling stuff. And we had no idea, and the school had absolutely no idea.
Stories like these are behind plans to toughen up regulations online. Tech companies will face fines of up to 10% of their turnover if they don't take down material relating to drugs and arms dealing, encouraging suicide, fraud and revenge porn. Those sending threatening messages, like the racist abuse of England's footballers last year, will face prosecution, as will people at the companies themselves.
The organisations will have to name individuals who will be responsible within those organisations for complying with the legislation. If they continue to flout that legislation, those named individuals will be responsible and could face up to 5 years imprisonment.
Tech companies say they welcome the clear guidance from government and that they see the need for more regulation. They say that the internet needs to become a safer place too. But there are concerns that this could stifle people's access to information if companies were to over-moderate and remove too much content in order to comply.
Other important industries.
Experts say the challenge will be putting it into practice.
But on Facebook platforms alone, people are posting more than 100 billion times a day. In 2017, Facebook and Instagram were taking down 35,000 posts a day about self-harm and suicide alone. So this is regulation not at a minor scale, but at an industrial scale.
While there's criticism about whether the plans go far enough, they will mean a revolution in how the online world is policed. Katie Prescott, BBC News.
And if you're affected by any of the issues in that report, there's information available from BBC Action Line at bbc.co.uk/actionline. Here with all the sport is Carthy Nanaya Seagram at the BBC Sports Centre. Hi there, Carthy.
Hi, Clive. Thank you very much. The opening day of Rugby Union's Six Nations was a successful one for Scotland, who have won back-to-back Calcutta Cup games against England for the first time in 38 years. Scotland won a tight encounter at Murrayfield by 20 points to 17, while Ireland had a comfortable 29 points to 7 win over the defending champions Wales. Joe Wilson reports.
This tournament has been waiting for them. Supporters are back. Welcome to the tradition. Scotland versus England, best of rivals. It's a close relationship. When Scotland made the most of this early opportunity, the man who crossed the line to score used to play for England's under-20s, Ben White. The youthful energy for England came from Marcus Smith, 22 years old in the number 10 shirt. With that try England led, here comes a decision. A kick towards the Scottish winger, Luke Cowan-Dickie, the only English defender. What happened? Well, Scotland would have scored if Cowan-Dickie hadn't knocked on that ball deliberately, the referee ruled. Yellow card, penalty try, the game was tied. Then with 9 minutes left, Finn Russell had a penalty. To put Scotland 3 points ahead, it was there. And if Scotland could hang on, if they could boot that ball finally, anywhere safely, it was their game.
Well, beating England is always a joy, of course, but it's becoming a regular occurrence for Scotland. And what do we see in that team celebrating at the other end of the pitch? A Scotland potential Six Nations champions.
It means a lot to us, but it means more for our country, for the people here. And we delivered a winning performance, but we know we can improve, and we'll have to improve if we want to win another trophy later on this season.
Well, the first weekend is about first impressions. It took 2 minutes for Ireland to score against Wales. Bundy Aki with that finish. By the end of the game, they had 4 tries. This was going out to Gary Ringrose. 29-7 against the defending champions. Well, that's a statement. Joe Wilson, BBC News.
It's officially the opening day of the Winter Olympics, and Great Britain's mixed doubles curling team, who are the current world champions, are aiming for Olympic gold. There was, though, disappointment for the snowboarder Katie Ormerod, who was making her Olympic debut in Beijing. Andy Swiss reports.
We're underway. The first day of the Games and the first gold up for grabs in the gruelling sport of cross-country skiing. And as the rest faded, Norway's Therese Johaug defied the -20 conditions to seal her place in Olympic history. And at last! But Britain's hopes of an early lift-off didn't fail to qualify for tomorrow's final. After breaking her heel just before the last Games, though, at least she got down safely. Not to be then for Katie Ormerod. She still has a second snowboarding event to come here, but her hopes of bringing Britain an early medal have ended in disappointment. Where will he? Well, hopes came crashing down in the speed skating. Catherine Thompson and Niall Tracy both taking tumbles. But the ice proved far nicer for the hosts.
It looks like it's going to be a gold for China.
A thrilling victory for China in the mixed team relay. Their Games are off to a glittering start. Andy Swiss, BBC News, Beijing.
It's time to pop out of the room if you don't want to know today's FA Cup results, as Match of the Day follows soon on BBC One. Kidderminster Harriers from the 6th tier of English football were 2 minutes away from making FA Cup history after scoring first and leading Premier League side West Ham until the 91st minute of their 4th round match. But West Ham equalised and went on to win 2-1 in extra time. That's all from the BBC Sports Centre, Clive.
Carthy, thank you for that. And that's it. From me and the team, have a very good night.